Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast that still discovers all its new music from the free CD attached to the latest issue of Kerrang! I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, and joining me is my co-host, Stu Joslin. Stu, how are you?
Hi, mate. Yes, I'm fine, thanks, which is sadly more than can be said for you at the moment, isn't it? You speak to us from quarantine, but the pod must go on. You're a true performer.
Exactly, yes. It'll take more than a little bit of COVID to stop me recording this pod, especially when we've got such an exciting guest coming on, Stu.
We absolutely have. This is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. We are speaking to lead singer and guitarist of 90s pop punk band Midget, Richard Gombault. He's going to be on the show this evening, speaking to us about his memories of the 90s. I really can't wait. This is sort of coming full circle for me for something that began in late 1997. So nearly 30 years later, I'm finally getting to speak to the man who kicked off that story way back when.
Yes, fantastic. I do love completing these circles on the pod, something we do every now and again. It's very satisfying. And that's going to be a great interview coming up shortly. But before then, Stu, you must be getting ready to go back to school in a week or two, seeing as it's that time of year.
Yes, I'll be ironing my uniform next week and getting ready to head on back to the classroom.
Well, you are going to benefit from this sponsor today, because today's episode is sponsored by Yikes Stationery. If you go down to any participating branch of WH Smith's or Woolworths and quote the code YIKES, all right 90s, you can get 15% off their range of Yikes pencils and sharpeners and their multi-pack bundles. So get down there and liven up your pencil cases ready for the new school year, courtesy of this episode's sponsor, Yikes Stationery.
Many thanks to the guys at Yikes for that. I'm afraid you're going to have to fill me in here, though. I don't remember Yikes Stationery at all. This is rare for me, but I don't remember that. What were they like?
They were very brightly coloured pencils, and they were sort of like, even the wood was brightly coloured. So you would sharpen your pencil, and the shavings you'd get off it would be brightly coloured. And so people would collect them for their pencil cases, and they were sort of just really garishly designed, and they had these funny logos of crazy looking people on them, and they were all the rage in, I would say, 1995 was probably their peak. I associate them very much with 95 and being in year 6. That was the Yikes era. So maybe a little bit before your time.
Well, you know me well enough now to know that anything garish is good by me. So I think I'm going to head down to Smith's and avail myself of that offer.
Time now for the bulletin board. I think we've got a couple of things, haven't we, Stu? I will kick off. Well, one small thing, Stu, actually, before we get started with the main things, is I made a huge consumable-based discovery this week, and I of course shared it with you over WhatsApp. It was the unbelievable discovery, thanks to my friend Kate, who sent me a heads up about this, the rediscovery of Mbongo, made in a local branch of Iceland, in the drinks aisle, and I could not believe it.
We're closing a lot of circles on this podcast tonight, aren't we? We've been after Mbongo for many, many years, and it was just round the corner in your local branch of Iceland. That is absolutely fantastic. I was really thrilled for you, mate, when you told me that it had been rediscovered. And many thanks to Kate for letting us know, definitely.
Yeah, it was so exciting. Ideally, it would have been in 3 multi-pack of little cartons with a straw, but it was a big 1 litre carton. But, you know, it tasted exactly the same. So thank you so much to the guys at Mbongo for continuing their mission on in regards to tropical juice drinks.
Are we speaking to Jeff about some sponsorship in the future? Possibly?
I think we've got to, really, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. It has to be done. Oh, no, hang on a minute. But then he's going to want to go out to the Congo on a business trip, isn't he, and get us to foot the bill.
Of course he is, yeah. All expenses paid by us, I imagine. Yeah, so maybe we shouldn't tell him. Yeah,
this one can't be done on Zoom, boys. It can't be done on Zoom. It has to be done in person.
Oh, I can see.
You want that money? I've got to get on that plane.
Yeah, let's keep it to ourselves. Okay, so the main things on the bulletin board. The first thing I have is a message from legend of the pod, Hannah Kelly, who is responding to our 24 Hours of Food and Drink episode we did the other day with Adam, brother of the pod. And she says, I've been listening to your food and drink episode. Loved the trip down memory lane on this one. And I thought I'd share my dream 90s menu with you too. Firstly, I bloody love Lincoln biscuits. Had forgotten about them, so thank you so much for the reminder. They were a great tea dunking biscuit. So my dream 90s breakfast would be a cup of tea, purely for dunking, not drinking, and a selection of biscuits to include Lincoln, bourbon, and custard creams. Also rich tea, but you had to master the dunk technique so they didn't dissolve into the mug. That's a good point. You can't dip a rich tea, can you? I mean, I'm at risk of sounding like a Peter Kay routine here, but a rich tea is such a thin, weak biscuit.
No, I don't think you can do that.
But hang on, this is, I shouldn't be criticising. This is Hannah Kelly's choice here, not mine. So, and to go with that, she says her drink would be a glass of Sunny D. So be careful how much you're drinking of that, Hannah. We don't want to have any of our listeners turning yellow. The mid-morning snack would be a packet of Tuck Shop Space Raiders crisps, a pack of candy cigarettes, and a handful of flying saucers. I choose blue raspberry Panda Pop to drink with my snack. What were candy cigarettes made out of, Stu? Because they were like chalk, but...
Yeah, I remember having these in the late 90s, and yeah, they were very chalky. I'm not entirely sure what they were made of, to be honest with you. Just sort of compacted sugar, I think. Really.
Yeah, but I don't remember them actually tasting of anything, even sugar. They were just sort of edible, but that's the best you could say about them, from what I remember anyway. I didn't have them very often.
And they weren't very nice, I've got to be honest with you, in my experience.
Very odd things. And then Hannah says for her 90s lunch, I'd often have several slices of malt loaf lathered in butter in my lunchbox if my mum was in a rush. I'd also like a frube and a cheese string in my lunchbox with a Capri Sun to drink, please. Honourable Munchin, very clever.
Nice, yeah, like that.
I'd also really like a teddy bear meat sandwich. I assume she means those slices of ham or whatever it was, luncheon meat that had a face on it. It was usually a teddy bear, wasn't it? God knows what was in those things. we were never allowed them. But yeah, very 90s. I wonder if they still do them, or if it's something that's Jamie Oliver paid to. I wouldn't be surprised.
When I had a brief stint on the deli at Morrison's in spring 2008, the teddy bear ham was still going strong. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, okay. Did you sell a lot of it?
Not that I recall, no. But the garlic sausage used to go very well.
For her afternoon snack, she's having a bag of iced gems and one of those tiny cans of Coke, which I don't think you can get anymore, but my grandma always filled her fridge with. Yes, definitely remember them, the small cans of Coke and the iced gems. One of the hardest food substances known to humankind, the iced gem. And then for 90s dinner, she's having Finder's crispy pancakes, which is obviously what you had, Stu, and potato waffles with spaghetti alphabet shapes, which is what I had. So a typical dinner for us, so beige, but I still feel very nostalgic for it. Or my mum's homemade 90s Weight Watchers pizza. It didn't really resemble pizza as the base was made with cottage cheese, making it very crumbly, but it was my favourite meal growing up, and I still sometimes request it when I visit for dinner. And then for dessert, she's having Chocolate Angel Delight. And to drink, she's having a sip of her dad's lemon hooch. Her dad was drinking lemon hooch.
Wow, what a cool guy.
It's weird that she was raised by a 15-year-old boy. Amazing, Hannah.
Questions have to be asked there, surely.
Yeah, but that's fantastic, Hannah. Thank you so much for letting us know your dream 90s food and drink. We love that sort of stuff. So yeah, if anyone else listening wants to get in touch with their dream day of food and drink, please do so.
Yeah, wonderful to get a bit of crossover there between our respective choices as well with Hannah, just to show that, we are really of a piece with our listeners. We tend to think the same way, and that's a really good thing about our little community here, I think.
Yeah, she does clarify that she wrote that before she heard our choices. So she had actually done it independently, yeah.
Yeah.
She was obviously so excited by the concept of the episode that she had to write the message before she'd even listened to it, which I love.
A couple of brief things from me. First of all, can you see what I've got on my ear there, Alex?
It looks like some sort of it looks like a diamond. It looks like bling in your ear.
It's a simulated diamond stud. And this is in my ear currently and this will have taken place before the episode comes out, I'm afraid. But I am taking part in the finale of the 30th anniversary of Box Rocks this year, which is a big local music festival that takes place yearly at the Queen's Head pub in Box, which was where listeners will know we recorded our interview with Nigel Tassel last year. So big shout out to our friends at the Queen's. And I'm in a boy band. All of my 90s dreams are coming true. I'm in a boy band. We're called Fake 2, so it's more of a boy duo, really. Myself and a lovely chap called John, we've been going through it the last few weeks. There is choreography involved. We're performing some Take That. We're performing some Five. We're performing some Backstreet Boys. It's taking place this coming bank holiday Monday as we record this episode. I cannot wait. And next time we get together to record, I will, of course, give you a full report from that event. I'm sure some footage and things will be made available online after the event as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to living out all my sort of Gary Barlow-based dreams from the mid-90s.
Backstreet is well and truly back in box this weekend. I really do hope there's some good footage that comes out of that, because I want to see it, basically. If I could be there, I'd be there, but I can't. So yeah, get your phones out, anyone who's going, and film it, because yeah, I'm desperate to see it.
One more brief thing, just for any YouTube Match of the Day fans. I found the Motherlode on a channel called DM Arsenal Archives, and they're masquerading as Arsenal highlights, and the guys just titled the videos with the Arsenal result from that day and what the season is, but it's actually the full Match of the Day programme. And there's I've watched about 10 from the 92-93 season over the last few days, and it has been absolutely superb. So if you feel the same way as I do about vintage Match of the Day, go and check that channel out, because there's some good stuff on there.
One final thing for the bulletin board. We have another message from Dad of the Pod here regarding the goings on in our back rooms at the pod.
Wonderful.
And he says thus: I expect you've heard that the Seniors All-In Wrestling League has had to be cancelled following Sheila Bowden-Hill's unfortunate incident with a ceiling fan. Sheila is, or was, Alex's mother's tag partner, so the atmosphere is quite sombre, Shez Greenwood at the moment. Jeff was furious, blaming a cancellation on the woke brigade's obsession with health and safety. He told the inquiry that firstly, they can do wonders with prosthetics these days, and secondly, Sheila is left-handed anyway, but they would not be swayed. Afterwards, up at the Masonic Lodge, I had to step in and argue very forcibly against Jeff's proposal to move the whole wrestling organisation underground. He was talking about sharing venues with the local badger baiters, but after a bit of a sit-down and a glass or two of reviving Wincarnis, he did calm down. Now he's looking for a new project, so be warned. And the Seniors Batter and Natter group are looking for another challenge. I gather that a rap battle league, whatever that is under serious consideration. So our best wishes go out there to Sheila, and hope she has a full recovery. It sounds like
of course,
rather nasty incident.
Yes, best wishes for a very speedy recovery.
But yeah, thank you for the update there, Dad of the Pod. Keep them coming, because we do like to keep abreast of what on earth is going on back there and down at the lodge.
Yeah, and just going back to what I said earlier, Jeff looking for a new business venture. That trip to the Congo could be the one. It could be on. We need to keep a close eye on that. Time now for What's the Most 90s, and it's time to put the cuffs on and head down to the station as I ask you, Alex, who is the most 90s TV cop?
Well, this for me is a great opportunity to give a shout out, a long overdue shout out to, I think, one of the greatest TV characters of all time, from one of the most underrated TV dramas of at least the 90s, if not all time. It's Detective Andy Sipowicz from NYPD Blue, played by Dennis Franz, of course, who had already appeared in Die Hard 2, I think, before this. Basically, I think Andy Sipowicz is, as I said, one of the greatest TV characters of all time. A real complex character. At times, he was an anti-hero, but went on a real journey throughout the run of the whole series. I think it started in maybe the very early 90s and ended in the early 2000s, and he had a real journey over that whole run, and he just became someone that you really rooted for. And just an amazing performance by Dennis Franz, just really gave like such life to that character. Well, this won't surprise you, Stu. He was someone who didn't always play by the rules, but he did always get results, like all the best 90s cops. There's some big potentials for this category. I'm sure you're going to name some more, but it was just a great opportunity to give him some kudos, and a good shout out for Dennis Franz, who I think is really underrated as an actor. And I had to give some love to NYPD Blue and Andy Sipowicz.
That's fantastic, and a very impassioned application for him to be added to the ledger. To my shame, I only know Sipowicz from the Simpsons episode where Homer tries to go to the country club wearing a short sleeve shirt and a tie, and Marge tells him off.
Homer, I don't think you should wear a short sleeve shirt with a tie.
Oh, but Sipowicz does it.
If Detective Sipowicz jumped off a cliff, would you do that too?
Oh, wish I was Sipowicz.
So that's my only experience of Sipowicz, but any man who wears a short sleeve shirt and a tie has got to be worth his salt as a cop. Yeah, so I think I need to take a further look into his oeuvre. Would you like to hear mine?
Yes, please.
Okay, as you know, I was a massive fan of The Bill back in the 90s. Used to play it in the playground with my friends at primary school, whether they liked it or not. And my favourite character from The Bill was, of course, PC Dave Quinnen, played by the wonderful Andrew Paul. I'm not entirely sure why I latched on to PC Dave Quinnan in the way I did. He must have just been in an episode where he was particularly heroic or did something a bit funny, and I just appreciated him from then on. I wasn't allowed to watch The Bill when it was too fruity, so my mum used to have to look in the TV magazine and check the subject matter of the episode, and if it was like, you know, petty crime or somebody stealing a car, then that was fine. But if it was something a bit more deep, shall we say, then I wasn't allowed to watch it. Yeah, I was obsessed with the idea of joining the police. I had all the kit for a while that I used to play with, but then my obsession with The Bill and therefore my idea to join the police sort of naturally faded. But PC Dave Quinnan always has a place in my heart, and whenever I see the actor Andrew Paul on anything these days, I always have a little thought for PC Quinnan. So there we go. It's Sipowicz versus Quinnan.
Fantastic. I thought you'd be between Quinnan and Wiggum. I didn't know which way you were going to go.
Of course. I did also think about putting up maybe a little bit of an obscure one, but Mr. Morley, who was the main police presence in the 90s series of Minder when Gary Webster took over from Dennis Waterman as the Minder character. But yeah, Wiggum and Morley were there in the background, but really it had to be Quinnan. I can even remember his service number was Sierra Oscar 340. I can still just remember that.
Of course you can. I also want to give a shout out to Frost, of course.
Of course.
A solid detective up there in Denton. It's actually, the more you think about it, the more options there are. But I think we've both gone for our natural choices. I also have to give a quick shout out to brother of the pod and legend of the pod, Adam, who came up with the suggestion for this, What's the Most 90s? So thank you much, Adam, who also correctly predicted both of our choices, I should say. Yes, if anyone else listening wants to give us a suggestion for What's the Most 90s, please do, because we're always looking for new suggestions for this feature, because we've been doing it for a while, and sometimes the ideas don't come to us that quickly, shall I say. So please do send in your suggestions, because it'll be much appreciated.
Yep, the more work we can get you to do for us on our behalf, the better.
Yes. Nicely translated there, Stu.
You got to be honest in this game. This time on the show, we're in the company of the singer and lead guitarist from one of the UK's finest pop-punk bands of the 90s. They're back for a brace of shows in late 2025, which we'll discuss later, but not before we chat about his experiences as an up-and-coming musician during the 90s and what the decade means to him. It is a true honour and pleasure to welcome onto the show from Midget, Richard Gombault. Rich, good evening, mate. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How's everyone?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's
great,
an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's always lovely to speak to somebody who's really been there and done it during the decade, so it's fantastic to have you on. It really is.
90s. I speak no other language.
Oh, you're definitely the man for us then. You're definitely the man for us. Alex, before we get into our usual guest questions, I think it's fair to start with the reason really why we're all sort of on this call tonight, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is this. I'll hold it up here. This is the 15th of November 1997 edition of Kerrang.
Wow.
And this is the free CD which came with it. So this is the actual free CD that came with my dad's actual copy, which I've kept all these years.
Wow.
That copy of the magazine I picked up off of eBay. So Rich, you'll recognise this, correct?
I do. Yeah, I know exactly what's on there as well.
Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, my dad would have bought that magazine, no question, because John Bon Jovi was on the cover and he was a massive fan at the time, still is. But then I just got passed down the CD and I was 8 years old at the time, I think, 1997. Yeah, 8 years old. And I just completely latched on to track 3 on that CD, which is Silly Little Rich Cow by a band called Midget. Yeah, and I just obviously had no idea what the lyrics were about or anything like that. No idea about the meaning, but I just love the melody and the song itself, to the extent that I took the CD with me to a birthday party that I attended for one of my classmates at my primary school, where we were told to bring along a song each that we could play throughout the day. And so it was that Silly Little Rich Cow got a spin in the back room of the Old Road Tavern in Chippenham during what Roxanne Warrington says 8th birthday party. So there we are, that's why we're all here.
My praise indeed.
So while we're on the subject of this particular song, after all these years, I can now finally ask, what was the inspiration behind that track?
Well, that was one of the very first songs that I wrote. I was probably only about 15, I think, when I wrote that song.
Wow.
And it was typical boy meets girl type thing. There was a girl on the school bus, and she'd made the mortal sin of sitting in the wrong seat. So some of the the cool girls, like the goal attacks, as Louise from Weena would say it. They were having a go at her, saying, "You don't sit there, get out of it, you silly little rich cow." I thought, ooh, song title there, I think. And I actually quite like this girl. So I wanted to know a bit more about her, get to know her and what have you. But she was very difficult to kind of get near to. She seemed a very, very kind of closed book, very guarded. So that's really what it was. It was a song about wanting to get to know someone, but in a teenage way, not having a clue how to go about it.
Wonderful. And you wrote that when you were 15. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really early one.
So there's a couple of little bits about Midget in the magazine here. So I'll just there's a little biography here with a lovely picture of the three of you. It's been a good year for Midget. A string of top singles and a triumphant Kerrang-sponsored tour has seen the Stamford trio making an awful lot of friends. 1998 should ensure that their exuberant blend of buoyant melody and rampant guitars gives the likes of Ash and Symposium a run for their money. So high praise indeed there.
Yeah.
And then
what happened, did it?
and also later on, there's a competition here as well for the Alcopop CD and some stickers and a Jelly Belly T-shirt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's still some time to enter that, I think. Closing date November the 18th, 97. So maybe I'll enter that one when we're off. So there we are. That's that was my introduction to Midget, and a band that I still obviously listen to and appreciate today, and that's why it's so wonderful to have you on the show.
Nice. Oh, pleasure.
Right, I think we should start at the beginning. So, Richard, I think we'll ask you what your life was like at the beginning of the decade, going into 1990. Where were you at? What was your life looking like? And what were you up to?
1990, right at the start of the decade, I'd have been just getting into my teens. I was absolutely obsessed with football. I was a big Arsenal fan, still am. So life was really good back then. We'd won the league at Anfield. I don't know how much into football you are, but I'm absolute obsessive. Great times for the Arsenal back then. Italia 90 as well, like Gazza's tears in Turin. Even the cup final in 1990, it was Man United Palace, and it was that 3-3 game, 2 goals for Ian Wright. He came on as a sub. I think he'd broken his leg, and that was his kind of comeback game. Just like football seemed to be full of narratives, full of stories, exciting characters. It's not quite the same these days. I don't think. It's a very different feel around football. But that was me at the time, utterly obsessed by all things football, and music hadn't really featured too much on the horizon. I played the piano a lot, but I hadn't taken up guitar by this point. Certainly hadn't started singing in any seriousness, and not really writing songs. Although me and Andy, we'd had a little sort of duo thing. I'd play the piano, he would play the drums, and we played for, was it like the Rotary Club or Round Table, something like that. Bunch of old people. And we would play the theme tune from Auf Wiedersehen Pet. We'd play Basin Street Blues, and we've got a video of it somewhere. And Andy does this massive Rage Against the Machine fill right at the end of Auf Wiedersehen Pet. So I suppose the seeds were sown relatively early on, although I didn't have any idea how important music was going to be at the start of the decade.
Well, you've revealed yourself to be a huge football fan, and you've mentioned Rotary clubs. So you are even more becoming the right man for this podcast, let me tell you.
Right.
So if we move on now then to 1995, And I'm assuming if there is a Midget record coming out in late 1997, the band has sort of begun to take shape by this point.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of kind of early incarnations. The band started when I was at school, probably about, I was 14, 15 maybe, and we pretty much changed our name every week. We had some dreadful names. We started off as Paul's Farmyard. We became Insane Devilfish. Moon Cheese was a particular favourite. Dylan's Day Trip, I think we were for a while.
I read one. Was it Smoking Lizards? Was that one?
Smoking Lizards. Yeah, that was kind of when it became a proper band. You know, we actually gigged with that under that name. Everything to that point had just been mucking about with silly song titles. Like we had one called Leper in a Wind Tunnel. That kind of shows where we were at. So yeah, Smoking Lizards. There were 4 of us. And then we gradually sort of morphed into a 3-piece, and that was when we decided on the name Midget. So that was probably 95 actually. Yeah, 95 is when we became Midget.
And then how soon did things sort of take off and a deal gets in place?
I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it would look like it happened really quickly, but it didn't feel like that at the time. We spent probably the best part of a year playing anywhere and everywhere, you know, student balls, pubs, clubs, you know, anywhere that would have us. We literally just got in the van, Lee's van, in fact, and just went everywhere, played with anyone for any amount of money, and practiced really. You know, cut our teeth, started becoming a real band, being more confident on stage, and we gave ourselves the year to do that, and I said, well, let's see where we can take it. Andy had a university place which he kind of got on deferred. I don't know what they call that now, but if nothing came of the band, then he was going to take up that spot at uni, and it was getting quite close. But Lee came home from work, and there was a message on his aunt's phone. Aunt's phones, remember that? And it was a guy called John Idman from Fire Records. You know, we'd obviously been sending out our demo to any label that we thought would be interested. We sent it to Fire because Mega City 4 were on that label at the time. We saw ourselves in the same kind of bracket as them. See what the label thinks. And we had a message from John on the aunt's phone saying, "It's John from Fire Records. Could you give me a call back?" We're like, "Oh my God, this is it." So Lee rings him back and he said, "Look, I don't want to sign you to Fire, but I run a management company called Pet Sounds, and I think me and my partner could get you a really good deal. You know, really like the songs. So let's see what we can do." And from there it started to snowball. We had a lot of gigs booked in London. Industry interest started to build. We played, I think it was the HQ Club in Camden, and we had about 45 record labels there on the night, which is quite scary. And then gradually that kind of settled down and morphed into the labels that were serious about signing us and those that weren't. And we ended up going with Radar Records. Let's see, I think we signed in October of '96. Yeah, so probably about 18 months it took in total.
Stu, can I break the rules and rather than skip right to the end of the decade, ask about '97, because that feels like we can't really skip that.
Yeah, I think that's probably a wise idea because that's when Alcopop comes out. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we signed in '96. That was an eye opener in itself, because obviously when you're getting taken out by labels, they're buying you meals, they're buying you drinks all night, getting you presents, letting you loose on the sort of the back catalogues at the offices, what have you. And we went out for our signing party. We went to the Dogs in Walthamstow, and they'd sponsored a name in our honour. So somewhere there's a copy of the Racing Post where we're there with the the winning dog and their owners. They haven't a clue who we are. We don't know who they are. We don't know anything about dogs. But it was a very, very quick and eye-opening experience where all of a sudden we've signed the deal and then the free drinks stop. It's like, you're paying for yourselves now, lads. You're on your own. You're sort of waiting for the drinks to appear. Okay, yeah, I see the way it's going to work now. So that was October, and then the following year, that was when we started to really start. Taking off and getting the bigger gigs. I think it started quite early actually. January there were the Brats. Do you remember the Brats? used to do like a series of gigs at I think it was the Astoria, and loads of bands. I mean, we were playing with Reef, 60-foot Dolls were on the bill as well. Dog Drill, I think they were on the bill, and Midget. We kicked things off. So really strange bill, but great to get onto a big stage and show people what we're about. Then we went out on tour with Bennett, who obviously we're going to be playing with next year. And then from then on, it was tours, singles, mini albums, recording, and so on, and Kerrang, of course.
Fantastic. Now, there's some great stuff on YouTube from around that time. It would appear you had a very dedicated archivist who was following you around with a camcorder at the time, because there's some great footage from is it Fuji Rocks, or there's a Japanese gig where there's like a camcorder at the side of the stage, and it's a huge crowd. Yeah. And there's a chap on the stage in cycling gear, which I was going to ask you about at some point if I could.
That was our guitar tech.
Oh right, okay.
That was Uncle Digby. He's a legend in the industry. He used to guitar tech for the Clash. So I don't know if you probably wouldn't have seen us live at the time. I used to have a guard put on my wrist because I would cut it up on my guitar. Right. And so it's a bit of toweling wrapped up in gaffer tape, and I could really go at it and not worry that I was going to end up bleeding everywhere. And that was a Joe Strummer paint and did strum guard, so I was quite pleased with that.
Nice one. And very quickly, just before we do move on to the end of the decade, the gig at the Roundhouse where a character called Mr. G. Beasley appears at the end of the show and has a little spoken word piece.
I know the one. Yeah, that was Astoria. But yeah, the G. Beasley thing. Oh my God. So he is a friend of our manager at the time, and they were at school together. And G. Beasley, Gareth is his real name, and he drew a load of dodgy images on John's exercise books, and he put artwork by G. Beasley. Right. You can imagine the kind of thing he's drawing.
Yes, yeah.
And he signed it off, artwork by G. Beasley. So the teacher picks it out and says, "What's this? Is this something to do with Beasley?" Don't know, so you'd have to ask him. I said, "Right, Beasley, you're going to take this book and you're going to take it home and cover it," which he did with the centerfold from Playboy, and again signed it, artwork by G. Beasley. So that was where the title for the song came on, and he was just an absolute nutcase. It's like we always wanted to get him on stage, and we never knew what he was going to do. That was the thing. We said, right, come on at the end of Invisible Balloon, just do some mad stuff like you normally do, but we had no idea what it was going to be. And oh my God, he would have us creasing up. Once he came on, almost like in Edwardian morning gear or something, but completely naked at the back with a pheasant's feather shoved up his arse. So no one else could see that, just us. That was just for the band. Somehow we managed to keep straight faces and get
fantastic. That wild card element at the end, keeping things interesting. That's absolutely brilliant. So if we do move on then to 1999, and Midget disband for the first time in 2001. So in 99, was it starting to look like it might go that way, or were we still going strong at that point?
Yeah, good questions. I mean, we'd lost our major label deals. We weren't on Warner's anymore. And it's quite difficult for a band once they've lost a major label deal. You're kind of seen as damaged goods. It can be tricky to get new record deals. So what we were doing was a lot of smaller deals with smaller labels. And licensing deals, which is what we did with Japan. So they would kind of buy albums offers. We would record the stuff, and they would then buy that album offers and release it. So it was a strange time. So we were still releasing stuff. We still had the profile. We were in Kerrang plenty. We were still touring. We were quite visible, but you could just tell that we didn't quite have the same weight behind us. Like the advertising budgets just wasn't there anymore. Videos we didn't really get to make so much anymore. So it was a different existence, but it was still fun. I mean, God, some of the stuff that we got to do, we were touring with China Drum, some of the studios that we were in. It was a good time to be in Midget, because I wouldn't say we'd mastered pop punk. That sounds wrong, but we felt like we'd done our time with pop punk, and that's when we were starting to branch out a little bit and just experiment with different styles. I mean, the album that became Individual Inconsistent, you know, it's really eclectic. There's all sorts of stuff on there, and it's still an interesting album to listen to. But yeah, it was probably clear that we weren't going to reach previous heights, if that's fair.
Well, actually, Richard, we normally end there our first questions because, you know, we're a 90s pod, but actually it feels sort of odd to finish the story at this point in the Midget story. So do you want to just give a little bit of an overview of what happened after 99 into the beginning of the new millennium? Yeah,
okay. Well, I think what happened, we as a band, we got pissed off. Like we got angry at the industry, really, at the state of things. We didn't feel that we were given kind of a fair crack of the whip. You know, we wanted to be taken seriously as a band. You know, we didn't like it, you know, being pigeonholed as you know, teen punk or prog rock or, you know, whatever they called it. It was useful. It was a tool that we were able to use to get attention, and we were able to play with it up to a point. But we were songwriters, Andy and myself, and you know, Lee was very, very keen as well that we were seen as a proper band. So when we started to experiment with Individual Inconsistent, we would get a bit annoyed that people would just write, you know, well, you know, it's not jukebox, it's not alco pop. And it's like, well, why would we do that again? We've done that. And we saw other bands, Blink-182 as an example. They started to go down a much darker, almost heavier route, and that was just accepted. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, this was a band that were writing songs about shoving firecrackers up cows' asses and, you know, that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, you know, they were perceived as serious songwriters. So beyond that, I think you got the sound of a very, very angry band who had a lot more to say. And actually, I think our last album, The Milgram Experiment, is probably my favourite. If I was going to put on a Midget album, that's probably the one I would put on. And it's, you know, by far the least popular Midget record with people, because it was so far removed from what we'd become known for. But actually something I'm really proud of. And there was a song on there called Oil, which I still really like. Reflection Stared is another. It's not particularly heavy, actually, but just as songs, I think they're really strong artistically, lyrically, and it feels that you know, people haven't really heard that as much. But we're hopefully getting stuff up on Spotify soon. Like Lee's looking into that, so it should all be available very, very soon.
But no, that's a fantastic insight into how it all worked, and you were also young as well, so yeah, it must have been it must have been such a sort of wild time in your life, I guess.
Yeah, it was great. It was what we set out to do. I mean, these things never quite work out exactly as you expect them to, but you know, some of the things that we were able to experience, you know, the Japanese tours, you know, going over there and already being successful. You know, we worked so hard in this country. We toured, writing all the time, you know, singles and press and all the rest of it. We hadn't had any of that in Japan. It just kind of exploded. So we went out there, you know, already, well, famous for want of a better word. We had you know, girls waiting outside a hotel room and getting showered with gifts every time we went to a radio station. It's what fame looks like, and yeah, kind of became aware. You know, it's not real, is it? Yeah, you know, when you become successful, like you have that taste of fame. Yeah, famous in Japan, not famous in the UK. So, am I famous? Am I not famous? It was a confusing episode, but it did make me realise that I didn't want to be famous. Actually, you know, having had that small taste of it, and you know, people knowing who you are, knowing where you're going to be and why, and you know nothing about them. I found that really, really strange. So at that point, I kind of, just sort of checked myself and I was like, no, I don't want fame. How weird. Like, I'd always thought, you know, that's what I want. I want to be known. I want to be recognised. And turns out I didn't want that at all.
There you
How
go, Alex.
is that?
Proof if proof we needed, Alex. So we need to keep this podcast under the radar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's why our listener figures are so low, because we try and keep it that way.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed, a select band of listeners. Okay, so now that we've covered the 90s, the midget years, we'll call them, let's have a chat about some of the more cultural touch points of the decade. So we have a few different points that we run through with each of our guests, and we ask them what their favourite was in each of these categories throughout the decade. And what we'd like to ask you first, Rich, is what your favourite car of the 90s was. So this is one that you drove yourself or that a family member owned or anything like that, your favourite car of the 90s.
Okay. Well, I didn't actually pass my test until 2004, maybe 5 actually, 2005. Mm-hmm. So my favourite car was Lee's van, which was affectionately known as Dribble. It was a bright blue Bedford Midi. And he used to have a brown Nova. He did want me to tell you this. He used to have a brown Nova called Pooh. And once it became clear, right, this is what we want to do. We want to take the band seriously. We need a van. We need to be able to get ourselves from A to B at the drop of a hat without having to hire somewhere. So Lee bought the van, and that's exactly what we did. We went here, there, and everywhere. Had some very, very interesting nights in that van, because we would drive to a gig, get the beers in, and then we'd just sleep in it, wherever we were. And then when we got the phone call from John from Fire, who ended up being our manager, of course, he said, there's another band that I manage called The Shave. They're playing in Coventry tonight. If you want to go along, I'll stick you on the guest list. Like, yeah, that sounds good. Like, you probably won't have heard of The Shave, but they were awesome. They were a really clever, interesting, experimental pop band, I would say, in the vein of XTC. Anyway, we went to see them in Coventry, and it was at a student union. We couldn't get in because we weren't students at the time. And they said, there's a really good pub down the road. If you want to go there, you can come back later and then can get you signed in. So off we went. I mean, this shows how long ago. It was pints of Stella, 50p. 50p a pint. I mean, it was cheap even then. So I had a few of those, and the upshot being, by the time we actually got to the gig, I was slaughtered. And we ended up going to this after show party. And it's, I don't know, I'm probably misremembering it, because I was well out of it, but it seemed to be some kind of, it was a big hall. And I got thrown out for supposedly trying to take a dump on the dance floor. Now, I maintain to this day that is not what happened. I think what will have happened is it was a Cossack dance that just went very wrong. So I was railing at the injustice of this. I was outside in the car park, furious. I'd been lobbed out of this place that I hadn't done anything wrong in my eyes. Mm-hmm. So I decided to take out my frustrations on a white van. I was picking up the table. You'd never think of it. The most mild-mannered person you could ever meet. But I was throwing tables and chairs at this van. And our manager ended up getting a phone call from the student union, because I'd obviously been caught on CCTV, and we had to sign in our details and what have you. So I had to speak to this guy whose van I'd caused hundreds of pounds worth of damage to. John said, right, you're going to have to ring him up and you're going to have to sort this out. So, yeah, I will. I'm an idiot. Really embarrassed. So I rung this guy and I said, I am so sorry. I'm so ashamed of myself. I've never done anything like that before. I'd had way too much to drink. I'll obviously pick up the bill. Just let me know how much it was. And I never heard anything again, which taught me a really important lesson. That there is nothing I can't talk my way out of.
What a story. What a story.
Yeah.
And we have our episode title, A Cossack Dance That Went Wrong.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Stu, I don't know why I always get lumped with this question, especially when it's a musician I'm asking it to, because this is the hardest question. But Richard, can you choose an album or a musical act that meant the most to you in the 90s? Or should we say maybe a top 3, just to make it fair?
Top 3, okay. It is the question to end all questions, isn't it? That one. I couldn't sit here and not talk about the Pixies. because they were that band. As soon as I heard them, it was, you know, two sides of a C90, Doolittle on one, Bossa Nova on the other. And as soon as I heard those two albums, that was it. Game changer. The world was a different place.
There is this old woman. She lives down the road. You can often find.
Because I didn't know that sort of music existed. Like the colours that they were using, you know, the chord progressions, you know, Frank Black's vocals just insane. Lyrically, what on earth is he singing about? It was mad music, and it just made total sense to me. That's the best way that I can describe it. You know, before then I was listening to, oh my God, like Dire Straits. You know, my dad would he recorded The Alchemy for me. Everyone else was listening to New Kids on the Block and Bros, stuff like that. I had Dire Straits on my Walkman. So it was, you know, other people's tastes. I was listening to what that person would lend me. I listened to what that person recorded. The Pixies was the first time. Wow. That was just, you know, the world was a different place from then on.
And then she said, I'm digging for fire. I'm digging for fire.
So Pixies definitely. It's probably Nirvana as well. You know, it's a similar kind of thing. As soon as I heard Nevermind, again, it just made total sense. Like, yes, that is what music should sound like. Awesome. Yeah, do you know what? Do you remember the Spiral Carpets?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had a single. I think it's called "Dragging Me Down," and that they were a band that, you know, obviously I didn't discover them. You know, they were big in their own right, but I kind of felt like I was the first out of my circle of friends to land on the Spiral Carpets, and that single. You know, you've got that that kind of keyboard riff that starts, and the bass drum, and then the guitars kick in, and again, that was just one of those moments. I think it was on Top of the Pops actually, and it just really grabbed me. Yeah, I've always listened to the Spiral Carpets. I wouldn't say that they're a particular influence on my songwriting, certainly not on my performing, but there was something there that really ignited something in me. It was, I don't know, it opened up that door. It's like you can do that. You know, that's the kind of music that you should be making. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to mention Carter. Well, I am mentioning Carter now because they were one of the first bands that they were the first band that I saw. Me and a couple of friends went to Cambridge Corn Exchange and saw them there. And we'd always liked Carter. You know, they just had that lyrical twist. The lyrics were great. You know, you could read them as poetry. They're so funny, so cutting, and really good pop songs. And of course, we got to tour with Carter many years. Well, actually, I say many years later. It was only 4 years later. It was '97 that we toured with them. Saw them in '93. That's what I mean. When you're growing up, like the years feel so much further apart, and they're really not in the grand scheme of things.
Well, Alex, I'll make sure I get the musical act question next time, okay? Because that is true. You always get it, and it's not fair. So I have the relatively the much easier question then of asking you what your favourite movie of the '90s was.
Do you know, I just went for Jurassic Park for this one. It just felt like the '90s were one of those eras where you had, you know, big films, you know, big blockbuster summer films coming out. You'd normally have a couple. And I remember being on holiday in Mallorca with my family, reading Select. Remember Select?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I was reading about Glastonbury. You know, all the sort of decent Britpop bands were playing that year. I remember Ash were there. And yeah, reading about Jurassic Park, and I just remember I just couldn't wait to get home and see it. You know, I'm a sucker for monster movies. You know, I love a good Spielberg film as well. You know, I sort of grew up with Indiana Jones and E.T., another favourite of mine. And Jurassic Park, you knew before you'd seen it, this is a huge film. You know, the whole premise of it is amazing anyway. You know, the whole DNA replication and what have you, and massive great dinosaurs as well. So, and it's still a film that I'll watch now. Like, I've watched it with my daughter several times. Had to judge it. When is she going to be old enough? Because it's pretty hairy in places. And I'm probably going to watch the last one tonight. Is it Jurassic World Dominion? I've just got Netflix and I found it on there. I did see it at the cinema and thought at the time it was probably one of the worst films I'd ever seen. So I just need to see it again to make sure.
It's always worth checking these things twice.
Absolutely. Must have missed something. Can't be that bad.
Alex, I know that'll be music to your ears because I know Jurassic Park is a particular favourite of yours as well.
Yeah, we need a bell that I can ring when someone gets the answer right, for these questions.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Right, let's move on then to video games. What video games were you playing, if any, in the 90s, Richard?
Yeah, I was a bit of a PlayStation fiend. I liked the football games because it felt like it was always something different. You were never going to get the same game twice. And if Arsenal ever got beaten by anyone, then I'd go on as Arsenal and keep going until
right the wrong. Yeah,
exactly. And so I always loved that one. And I liked playing it against friends as well. And I know the culture nowadays is you don't even have to be in the same room to play the games. Back then you did, so you needed the dual controllers. And we used to do our own commentary as well. So whenever someone's bursting through, like, and here comes Bergkamp, would you believe it? Frustrated commentator in all of us, I think.
Absolutely brilliant. Was there were the consoles on the tour bus? Or were there things like that, or was it more of a home thing?
More of a home thing. They would normally be in the studios whenever we were recording. But yeah, it was a home thing. We had vans rather than tour buses. They're much cheaper, you see.
Of course.
Actually, better. I think you honestly find those people that get big enough to warrant the tour bus, they would much prefer to be in a van and then hotel it at the end of the night. I don't know many people that enjoy sleeping on tour buses because they do all the travelling at night. They go in between the cities, countries sometimes. So you constantly trying to sleep while the bus is rocking. And I don't know many people that have enjoyed it.
Well, I'd like the chance to try. That'd be nice instead of driving myself or whatever. But maybe the chance to try one day. Who knows?
Yeah.
FIFA Road to the World Cup '98, possibly the greatest football game of all time. I'll just put that in there as well. Yeah.
Did you not find the kind of the player movement slightly weird? They'd always do that kind of movement.
But then it had the indoor mode to make up for it, which I loved, of course, the five-a-side mode, which was brilliant. Villa versus American Samoa was always a good favourite for the five-a-side.
It was no Actual Soccer 2 though, was it, Stu? Let's be honest.
No, quite right. Actual Soccer is trumps all. So we've spoken about the big screen. We've spoken about the video game screen. So it's only right that we address TV series. So do you have a favourite TV series from the period?
Alan Partridge. All day, every day. I'm absolutely obsessed with Partridge. So I suppose you'd go back to Knowing Me, Knowing You. That was kind of early 90s. So I remember watching that with my parents actually at the time. And it was that episode with Joe Beasley and Chicky Monkey. Remember the ones? John Thompson plays a deliberately terrible ventriloquist. There's the word. Yeah. So from that point, just absolutely loved Alan Partridge. He's still a huge favourite. So getting into I'm Alan Partridge. Because that was probably about 97.
Yeah,
I think it was top stuff. And once I get into the mindset, I can't stop doing Alan Partridge impressions. and it drives Kim, my girlfriend, mad. We actually, do you remember when it was lockdown, and there was a really weird period where you'd go to a pub and you weren't quite sure like if you should sit on the table next to someone. People were weird about it. So anyway, this couple came and sat down next to us. And, do you mind if we sit there? Like, yeah, absolutely fine, no problem. We're chatting away, and of course I'm partridging it up all over the place. And then one of my favourites is when he goes, "Oh, Jill, you're so dirty," and Kim's face just went. I didn't realise I'm really good at this, like hearing something, but it doesn't actually go in. And it turned out that the guy who was sitting near to us with his wife.
It was Steve Coogan.
Oh, if only, if only. But no, he was on the phone to someone called Jill.
Oh, right.
So I don't know. Maybe it was a daughter or sister. I don't know. But Kim had picked up that that there was some bad news, and I'm just thinking like, "Oh, Jill, you're so dirty."
I have to say that's a world-class impression as well. That is spot on.
Yeah.
Honed over many years, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might have to get you to record some beds for the pod, I think.
Yes. You're listening to Richard from Midget. Tremendous chap.
Wonderful. We'll clip that.
Yeah, definitely a popular choice with our guests, and another Stone Cold classic. I would be ringing a bell for that as well if I had one.
Yeah, win.
Hello, Alan. Lynn, hand me the apple pie. And remove yourself from the theatre of conflict.
What do you mean?
Go and stand by the Yakults. The temperature inside this apple turnover is 1,000 degrees. If I squeeze it, a jet of molten Bramley apple is going to squirt out. Could go your way, could go mine. Either way, one of us is going down.
Right, so the next question is the wild card then. So this is just anything else you want to mention from the decade that you loved that you haven't had a chance to shout out so far.
Okay, well I've gone for a book, and my favourite book of the 90s was called The Dice Man by a writer called, I think, Luke Reinhardt, if memory serves, and it was a really strange book. You sometimes get these cult classics based on a very unusual premise, and this one was about a guy who makes all of his decisions based on the roll of a dice, and it's just absolutely insane the stuff that he ends up doing. He was upstairs in his flat saying, if I roll a 3, I'm going to go downstairs and assault my neighbour. Just really messed up stuff. And I sometimes feel like I should do that. So I like people to make the decisions for me. I'm an overthinker, so I'm very aware that if I make one decision, then there are 99 billion other choices that I haven't made, and what if that was the better one? Do you know what I mean? Like if I I'll decide I'll have fish and chips for my tea tonight, there are a billion other meals that I'm not having. Should I have had one of those? Nightmare. So yeah, maybe I should take a leaf out of the Dice Man's book and just let the dice make all my decisions for me.
I'm not sure we've ever had a book chosen as the wild card before. That's fantastic. Yeah, another departure for the pod.
Yeah. Oh, I'm absolute biblioholic. Love books.
Fantastic. So we've got a couple of questions left. We've covered the cultural touch points of the decade. So the 90s feels like it was a very formative and important decade for you personally. What we'd like to ask is, how do you feel the 90s shaped the person that you are today?
I suppose it's the decade where I came to realise just how important music was to me. Me and my friends have always been into music, but I don't know. It just felt like it mattered more to me. Just there were certain chord structures. Just the way that one chord would change into another. It just did something to me. Inside it moved me. It stirred something, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to create in other people the feelings that were being created in me. It's like the History Boys, isn't it? Pass it on. And that's so the decades where I learned to play the guitar, I learned to sing, I honed my songwriting craft. I don't think you ever master that. It's something that's always going to be fluid. You're always trying different things. and experimenting. So yeah, that's how it shaped me. And even though I'm not doing performing professionally in that role anymore, music is still very much part of my life. I don't know if you're aware, I'm a primary school teacher now, and I do a lot of work with music. So the choirs that I'll put together, a few school rock bands as well. And they're really good. If you just give these kids the chance to shine, they are capable of so much more than they would have first thought, and anyone else would think, really. So it's a privilege to be in that position. To an extent, I've achieved a lot of the things that I wanted to in the band. We've released records, we've made videos, we were successful to a degree, and to now be able to kind of pass that on and inspire the bands of the future. That's quite a place to be.
That's absolutely brilliant. And anybody who is taught by you or has the chance to be taught by you is very lucky indeed, in my opinion. That's absolutely brilliant.
Right, we've arrived at the final question, and we're going to use our special 90s powers here to offer you the chance, Richard, to bring back one thing from the decade. So what would you choose from the 90s to bring back?
Right, it's a little bit abstract, because I thought, it'd be easy to say, I'd like to bring back push pops or something really, really arbitrary. What I'd like to bring back is the sense of occasion, the sense of anticipation that you used to get when your favorite band was releasing a new single or a new album, or there was a brilliant new TV series coming out. I think at the moment we live in a very instant, quick, easy culture where everything is available instantly. It's a click on an app, and you've got it. Food, music, binge watching is a thing where you just you don't need me to explain what it is. And it just feels like everything's too easy. There's no build up. There's no sense of occasion in waiting for something and enjoying it when it comes out. I don't know if you remember a Japanese punk band called High Standard. They were on Fat Records, and I remember going to a record shop when they had a new album coming out, and going into that record shop, and because they were a little obscure in this country at the time, but going into a record shop, finding it. And it's like, yes, they've got it, it's in. And then you physically got it there in your hands, you hold it and you buy it, and you own that. I feel like that's gone. That it doesn't feel like that's a part of the culture anymore. We're in a very different kind of climate, and I miss it. I miss the physical article of the CD, the suspense. You hear a single, like, I like that. Is the album going to be in the same kind of vein, or is it going to be a little bit different? I think we've lost it. So I think that sense of occasion, that sense of anticipation about the new stuff coming out, that's what I'd like to bring back.
Absolutely fantastic. I don't think we could agree more, could we?
Nah, that's spot on.
Nice.
Well, what a wonderful time we've spent with you, Richard. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you on the show. Just before we go, we've mentioned it a couple of times on the pod already, but just a quick word for the Midget shows that are coming up in late 25. So you're doing a show, you're doing 2 shows with Bennett, as you've mentioned, one in Stamford and then another in Aldershot. Yeah,
exactly. Really, really buzzing. It was just out of the blue that Jason from Bennett messaged me. He said, they're going to be doing a couple of gigs, sort of tail end of 2025. Would Midget be up for doing it? Don't say no until you've thought about it properly. And so, well, yeah, I'd love to do it. I think it'd be great, but need to see what the other two are up to and what they're thinking about it as well. And they were in for it as well. So it's like, oh my God, it's actually going to happen. It's something I've wanted to do for a little while. So yeah, starting to get quite excited about it. We've got the Aldershot gig is I wouldn't say it's a hometown gig for Bennett, but they have quite a good attachment to that area. They've had a lot of fun there, a lot of decent gigs over the years. I think they have an emotional attachment to Aldershot as much as anyone can. And then Stamford obviously is our hometown as well, so it made sense to do the 2 gigs there. And we'll see what if anything else comes of it. Who knows? But it'll be great to be on stage with Lee and Andy again, playing all the old songs. And fantastic to see the Bennett bunch as well. They're always good fun, and the band's always got on well, so it should be a really good fun.
That sounds great. You anticipated my next question as well about seeing what happens next. So hope to see some more shows coming up. So I will do my best to make the pilgrimage to Aldershot from Wiltshire, and finally
nice.
get to see a Midget live gig, and I'll come and say hello.
Excellent. Make sure you do.
Well, I have looked forward to doing this for a long time. It took me a long time to muster up the courage to send you a message and ask you if you'd like to come on the podcast. I'm so glad I did, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend an hour or so in your company.
My pleasure.
Well, that was something special, wasn't it, Stuart? I know you were really excited about that, and I'm so glad that you managed to get Richard to come on and tell us about his decade.
What a nice fella. Such a privilege to speak to him. If Midget don't do any additional shows after the 2 they've already got planned for next year, and fingers crossed they do, he's got a career in waiting as an Alan Partridge impersonator, hasn't he?
He has, absolutely. Yeah. I was wondering whether we should have asked him to come and do a whole episode as Alan Partridge, and we could just interview Alan Partridge for his 90s.
That's not a bad idea, but we've rather blown the gaff on that now, haven't we?
Yeah, well, I can bleep that out.
Well, listeners, this is the last time that you will be hearing our voices for a little while, because we have to go on a little end of summer, beginning of autumn break, don't we?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Stu. We will be taking a few weeks off to do a little bit of R&R and to get our heads straight again and to refresh ourselves. But we'll be back again in the autumn. So don't worry, dear listeners, we won't be away for too long. If you want to get in touch with us in the meantime about anything you've heard in this series of the pod or any other previous series, then you can do so in the usual places on our link tree, which will be linked to below. So click on that, find us in all the places on social media and such like. And also please do give us a like and a subscribe. We don't normally say that, but actually it's really useful for us. So if you could do that, that would be much appreciated. Obviously, we're going to be going on a bit of a break, but do send your messages in and we will read them out on the first episode back.
Yeah, we'll still be very much active on the social media channels during our breakaway from the airwaves. So do please keep the correspondence coming in. And as Alex says, it will be nice to have a bulging postbag to delve into on the first episode back. So we look forward to being back with you very, very soon.
And that wraps us up, I think, for the series. So it just remains for me to say thank you, Stu, for another successful series, I think, in the pod canon. And here's to the next one.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me again. I'm looking forward to Series 4, and it's good night from me. I'm just off to find the nearest white van and take out all my frustration on it.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to practice my Cossack dancing.
Bye now.
Goodbye.
It will be Series 4, won't it? Yeah, okay.
I think so, yeah.